started, Nina, I just want to say that, you know, as we go through this stuff, we're having a discussion. This is, you know, I just want to make sure that we're not making recommendations as far as like medical,
absolutely.
you know, because, you know, as you'll probably get into too, Nina, that people still don't really know what's going on with this thing, do they? It's very, you know, it's still very new for people. So when we get to the questions with virus and stuff, just know that this is we're talking mainly for us. We want to talk about strengthening your breathing during this, which is not a medical diagnosis, if I can say that talk.
No, that's absolutely fine. I mean, the situation is new for the entire world. You know, nobody knows what's going on. I'm not a clinician, so I can't make any recommendations. I'm a scientist, so I can tell you what connects to the breathing on literature that is out there, evidence that I know, but I definitely can't give any recommendation.
So perfect. Nina, just start out with just a quick little bio on who you are, what you do, and why we're talking to you.
Whoops, there goes my, that happens. There goes my screen. It's a bit of a shaky setup with a pen in the back. My name, totally professional. My name's Nina. My name is Nina Bausek. I'm from Austria. I speak to you from Austria, mainland Europe. So I'm a geneticist by trade. So I have studied genetics. I've worked in academia for 12 years in totally doing basic research, working on oncology, fertility, immunology, but mainly in fruit flies. So far away from any humans. And have about 6 years ago, totally changed careers and started working for a company called PN Medical. And as their chief scientist, because they just kind of wanted to link what they have been doing for decades as therapists, just wanted to link that a little bit to the evidence that is out there and how you can really, you know, what is the science behind the breathing, behind the respiratory muscles, behind respiratory muscle training. And I have been with them for the last 5 years or so. So it's kind of, this is where I got into the whole respiratory field, which I enjoy quite a lot.
I don't blame you.
Now, Nina, I wanted to start off with, I think that you and I have spoken before, and breathing kind of links so many different aspects of the body together, right? That that in the talks that you and I have had as well, I know is that I think that's morning time here. That's cool. I think that there's a lot of there's not a lot of argument or disagreement, but because people come at it from so many different angles, is that why there's not one kind of science around breathing? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you can look at it from every angle. You know, you can look at it from the anatomy of breathing. You can look at it from a cellular aspect, how breathing links to respiration and, you know, energizes each cell. You can look at it, you know, from an organ aspect. You need the breathing motion in the body, the physiology to kind of massage the organs and get this going. You need the oxygen in the blood, so you can look at it from a hematology point of view. So, you know, almost every science links into this. You know, if you look into oncology, you know, tumor cells need oxygen and how they hijack the system. So any place you look at, you can connect it to breathing and to respiration. And this is kind of why, and then obviously it's something that we have done all our lives. And it's one of the fundamental aspects of life, whether we breathe like we do or like plants do. It is one of the characteristics of life. So we've always done it. It's not as such a science. So yeah, you can look at it from every angle, and it all ties into it.
That's why I love it too. And you mentioned something important there. Could you just define in your words the difference between breathing and respiration?
Sure. Well, breathing is what you do with your airways. So you suck the air into your lungs and you excrete the CO2 out of your lungs. That's kind of the main aspect of what we need to do while we're breathing. So the air goes into the lungs And there in the alveoli, there's the layers get really thin, and the oxygen can just diffuse through the epithelium there and kind of get into the bloodstream, gets transported throughout the body, kind of oxygenates the muscles. And this is then where the respiration happens, when the oxygen actually gets to the cell and then kind of is utilized by the cell to make ATP, to make energy, utilized by the muscle cells to kind of keep working and keep energizing. And then on the other way around, it's kind of the muscles then excrete all their, rubbish, or excrete everything that they metabolize into the bloodstream again, and that gets brought into the lungs and then gets excreted. CO2 is the main one of them. So that's kind of the respiration happens at the cellular level, while the breathing is the aspect that we really observe, that we feel. This is what we do. We draw the air into the lungs and we exhale the air out of the lungs.
Yeah, and it's such a I think interesting and complex kind of system, yet we kind of take it for granted. Like we're oblivious to the fact, I think because it's both a manual and an automatic kind of system, that we have this, oh well, we just, if I sleep at night, I just trust my body to breathe. Things like that. It's such an interesting thing. Let's bring it to what's actually relevant today and what's happening today, because we've started getting an influx of people that are coming in to get interested in the work that we do, because currently right now with the virus pandemic that we've got going on, why is it important for us to look at not only our breathing hygiene, but also strengthening our breathing? Like, what can you talk to about that?
Well, I mean, the thing is, the coronavirus is a respiratory virus, so it's not airborne. You have to actually get the droplets into your body, or into your airways. So you don't just inhale it, that's not enough. But when you get the droplets in, it gets into the airways, and that's really how it enters the body. So this is why the lungs and the airways are such an important aspect of the immunity here. And this is why you have to look after them so well. So the way the airways work is kind of on the inner layer of the airways. You've got on the epithelium, you've got a mucus layer. And usually when you think about mucus, everybody kind of goes, oh, disgusting. It's actually really, really important, because the mucus layer kind of sits on these little hairs, the cilia, and it kind of gets moved back and forth as you breathe in, as you cough. That's very importantly, everything gets moved. But when the pathogen, like a virus or a bacteria, hits this mucus layer, this is where it encounters the first antibodies. It encounters, for example, macrophages, blood cells that are immune cells that kind of gobble up the virus if they need to. So this is really the first defense that we have. So this is why it's so important that this mucus layer of the epithelium at the moment is in tip-top shape. And there are certain aspects of it, because it's a layer of mucus and it has to be this mucus consistency. It shouldn't be too dry, and it shouldn't be too wet. So this is really the two extremes that you find, especially if if you've had a bit of a cold, or if you have an underlying disease like COPD, like asthma, you get this mucus buildup in your lungs, and you need to cough. You need to cough regularly, and this means that you have excess mucus that you need to get out. And that's really important at this time, that we don't have too much mucus in there, because if you have that and you can't get it out, then the virus can really go in there and just sit in there and happily breathe.
So what affects that? I mean, if we're going to have a healthy defense layer of this mucus, what are is it basic hydration? What are the other things that kind of keep the natural mucus lining there?
So you really addressed a really good point. Hydration is really important. It is a mucus layer. If you're dehydrated, then you don't have the liquid. It's not moving enough. So it's really, really important that you keep hydrated. I mean, this is what everybody's telling you as well. If you are ill, keep drinking hot drinks, and just keep drinking as much as you can to keep the hydration. And the other thing is, keep your cough effective. And this is where the respiratory muscles are really important. If you have the mucus, yes, you need to loosen up the mucus a little bit, but then it's really important that you can get it out. And the cough effectiveness is really, it's an interplay of inspiratory muscles. So these are the muscles that you use to breathing in, and the expiratory muscles, all the muscles that you use for breathing out, because you need to, the cough movement is really a sharp inhale of the breath, and then kind of getting everything together, and a really sharp like pulsating exhale to get the mucus out.
That's super interesting, because I think a lot of people associate a cough with being sick already, not something that is kind of like helping you, or something that you train to be healthy. So I guess this is an interesting segue into talking about the respiratory muscle training, and why that's so important in these, say for people with asthma, or people with COPD, as you mentioned, that are going to have, but even now more so for everybody to have their cough game, beefed up right now and at this time.
And you can test it. I mean, you've got the reflex cough, and the cough that is triggered. So the reflex cough, this is absolutely vital for survival. This is kind of if you get something down the wrong pipe, and it immediately, if you swallow water, it goes into the trachea, into your lungs. You immediately start coughing it out. And this is an absolutely vital reflex. If you don't have that, then you get food in your lungs, you get pneumonia. Not a good thing. So this reflex cough, there's also nothing that you can do about it. So if this is strong, that gives you a good indication that you have functional respiratory muscles. If you very often, it's called aspiration, that you kind of swallow a little bit into your lungs while you're eating, or during eating, you very often have to clear your throat, like, to get the food out. That means there's a little bit that could need strengthening. And then further down in the lungs, it's really kind of the inspiratory, expiratory muscles. They lie along the intercostals of the ribs, and the diaphragm, of course, as it's underneath the rib cage. They really work together to really kind of press everything together and just expel the mucus. And it's really important that they are strong, that you have got a strong diaphragm, strong intercostals, to just really optimize the system.
Wow, that brings up another question. So, and this is I'm asking for your opinion, not medical, but are things like asthma and COPD, understanding that there's a whole lot of things that can come with it, but really is the defense to those sorts of things building up this cough response? Is that a way to look at it, or is there something else that's?
It is contributing to it, but with asthma, COPD, heart failure as well, you often have an underlying respiratory muscle weakness. And this not only affects the cough, but also the oxygenation. So your lungs are just not working effectively enough. You don't get enough oxygen in, you don't get the CO2 out sufficiently enough. And that kind of makes the entire system a little bit less functional. So if you have respiratory muscle weakness, if your diaphragm the definition of respiratory muscle weakness is your diaphragm works at 70% or less of what it should work at.
All right.
So it is a real muscle weakness. And this is why, for example, elderly have this very, very often, because muscle weakness is something that is associated with aging. And it's really, it is quite hard to exercise while you're older. However, it is actually quite easy to exercise the lungs to keep the respiratory muscles at least stronger during aging. And then that kind of can reduce the risk, for example, of aspiration associated pneumonia, which really affects elderly people. But yes, asthma, COPD, all of these diseases are associated with a weakness of the respiratory muscles. So
if I'm hearing you right, the respiratory muscle training, or training your lungs and the diaphragm and all the muscles that are associated with the abs and all that, as probably the only iron that you can be pumping when you're in your older age, really, or well,
it's at least it's the one that you can do on your couch,
right.
or wherever you are. You don't need to.
Hey, that's a benefit, right? Like,
Absolutely.
You don't have to go anywhere to do it. I mean, we talk to people all the time about breathing, and we're like, you don't have to do anything extra, because you're already doing it. Like you're already 50% of the way there.
Yeah, you don't have to get your kit on, you don't have to put your shoes on. Exactly. Can sit in your pajamas.
Okay,
They're done.
so coming back to coronavirus, what's the benefit of doing respiratory muscle training when it comes to we've spoken about bolstering our immune system, right?
Yeah.
We haven't spoken about it in detail, but you know, we kind of know what are the benefits of having strong respiratory muscles when it comes to this thing? Because I've heard that one of the tests that they've been doing with people is to see if people can actually just take a full breath.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there are several aspects to it. So pulmonary hygiene and the cough effectiveness, we've touched on that already. The other is, because it's the respiratory muscles, if you are affected, one of the early signs is really dyspnea, this shortness of breath that you feel it's a bit of an air hunger, that you feel you can't take a full breath anymore, that you try to draw it in, but it's never enough. And also you will notice this, you know, if you might suddenly get out of breath a little bit when you're walking up the stairs, which you didn't do before. So you're just out of breath a little bit more. This can really be one of the earliest signs of a viral infection. And because this is what it affects, it really kind of weakens the respiratory system as the first step. It's really good to kind of train it up before, just to kind of basically start from 120%, you know what I mean? To just get it, get the muscles working and really be able to do a deep breath. As you said, this is another one of the natural defenses that we have, that we do take deep breath, because I don't know how about you, we've just started from tomorrow on, we have to wear masks wherever we go.
Oh, wow.
And because we're so scared of almost breathing, everybody kind of tends to turn their head when they speak to someone and breathe shallow. And shallow breathing is actually really bad because it means you're only using your upper airways. You're not having a full breath. You're not using the lower part where you actually have the good mucus layers, but also this is where the oxygen exchange takes place. So deep breathing is actually one of the first, and it's a natural defense against respiratory infections.
I want to come back to that fear-based breathing, because I think that's going to cause a whole lot of mental health issues as well. But before we get to that, and I want to come back to that, so let's table that. What can people be doing for their respiratory muscle strengthening? What are the things that they can either do, you know, at home, or I know you know, we've been working with you guys with the breather, with the device. So can you just explain a little bit about that and how it works and what the benefits are?
Yeah, sure. I mean, respiratory muscle training, you do train your respiratory muscles, of course, every time you're breathing, every time you're exercising, you strengthen them a little bit more. But we work with a respiratory muscle trainer, which is called the breather, and this kind of trains the respiratory muscles. Exactly. I've got I'll show you the sports version. So yeah, exactly. That's the breather fit. The black one. I'm sure you're using the breather fit, aren't you?
Yes, so we've got both, but I've got both just so people can see that it's two different devices.
And the way that works is really, it puts a resistance or a workload on your respiratory muscle. So it's exactly the same as picking up a dumbbell and using your biceps. It's just kind of puts a workload on the muscle. And the main breathing muscle, is the diaphragm, which is quite a big muscle. And that's responsible for breathing, but it's also responsible for core strength, for stability. So you actually get you get additional benefits to doing it. It's not only your breathing that gets better, your posture gets better, your balance gets better. And it's just because the way it's positioned. Also, if you've got a stronger diaphragm, again, it moves. When you inhale, the diaphragm goes down and kind of pulls the lungs down and really increases the surface of the lungs. Very important for gas exchange, because the alveoli get really big and there's a lot of surface. And as you exhale, the diaphragm moves up again. And as it does this motion, if you've got a weak diaphragm, it doesn't do this. It kind of only does that. If you've got a strong diaphragm, you get the full range of motion. And what this also does, it kind of massages all the internal organs, you know, everything that's down there, the liver, the intestines. Quite often it might be that you've got problems with your digestion, and just by kind of breathing deeply and kind of improving your respiratory muscle strength, you actually sort that problem out as well. So what you do, the way it's built is essentially you breathe in through it, you breathe out through it. It offers resistance because it has little holes that are covered by a membrane, a diaphragm, you can set the resistance independently for inhale and for exhale.
Mm-hmm.
And all you do is I set it on 1 and 1 because I've actually had a bit of a lung problem. And you just sit upright, use diaphragmatic breathing. So you do proper belly breathing, and then just inhale 2 to 3 seconds, hold for a second, and exhale 2 to 3 seconds. Yeah. And you should really feel your belly goes out when you inhale and your belly goes in as you exhale. Exactly. Yeah. So you feel your diaphragm is moving as you exhale because you're actually pushing against the resistance. You feel your abdominals are moving as well. You also train all the intercostals here. You train the accessory muscles of the respiration up here that's around the shoulders and the neck. You also train the muscles that are used for speech and swallowing. And it's actually really good if you speak a lot in public, if you need to speak loudly. What it also often does, it kind of it triggers the cough reflex, and this is just if you've had a little bit of buildup in your lungs.
I just muted it out because I could feel it just automatically loosen up all the mucus. So.
Yeah, that's just because you get a much stronger airflow in and out through the lungs, and this kind of really massages the whole layer there. And this is what you want. So you actually want this. It's really good kind of to let the cough out. Then what you can also do if you've got mucus built up, for patients who might struggle with the cough effectiveness, we have a Hof cough maneuver where you kind of flap your wings a little bit when you exhale and do the sharp cough out. This is also something to help the cough effectiveness if you have an infection or afterwards.
Right.
And the good thing is also for respiratory infections, what we're talking about now, is also that if you start this, you shouldn't do it in the acute phase. If it really hurts, don't do it. But once you get better and you start training your respiratory muscles again, you recover much quicker, just because you get the muscles oxygenated much better, because they heal better if they're oxygenated.
So it's a really great post-exercise to do if you're sick at all from any kind of respiratory or flu or anything like that.
Yeah, it's prehabilitation and rehabilitation afterwards. So it's pre and post. It has its effect on both ends of an infection.
Wow, that's so. So if anyone wants to know any more, we'll put the details in the comments. If you guys want to start asking some questions, great, because I'm monitoring it here. Nina, I just want to come back to what we were saying before about all this fear and breathing and wearing masks, and I want to address one thing. We put up an article the other day about breathing through your nose and about how we talk about the mucosa and how the nitric oxide that gets formed in the little hairs. I think that's where it gets formed in there. That actually sterilizes the air as it comes down into the body. Is that like a...
Yeah, that is true. I mean, your nose is part of your upper airways. So you've got a really, really good inner layer, inner epithelium. You've got the cilia there. You've got mucus layers there as well. You've got a local immune system in your nose as well. So it is really good, if you can, that you do nose breathe. This is the first barrier already, and kind of filters out so many pathogens, contaminants, but also dust and mites, bigger things that you don't want to have in your lungs either. So if you can, it's a really good idea to stick to nose breathing. It doesn't, just because we train the diaphragm by mouth, this is just because it's the easier way to train it, because you can build up more pressure when you use your mouth. But actually the nose has the better connection to the diaphragm. So actually when you nose breathe, it's from the nervous system, that's actually the more direct connection to the diaphragm.
So would you say that strengthening the respiratory muscles through respiratory muscle training, like using the breather device to strengthen the diaphragm, will make your nose breathing more efficient?
It will make your nose breathing more efficient, because it will just make it easier. You're not drawing the air in through your nose. You're actually drawing the air in with your diaphragm.
Yes.
When you concentrate on including the belly breathing into your breathing again, it gets a different dynamic. You're not doing this. It really comes from down there. You really kind of draw the air in with the most efficient breathing muscle.
that brings me to another question. So let's go back before about the shallow breathing and creating anxiety and fear from that. So if we were to look at breathing through our nose is actually going to get a deeper breath and more oxygen saturation, which is probably going to lower that the amount of, I guess, physical anxiety that comes into the body by doing that, breathing through the nose and practicing that.
Yes, I mean, I think the mouth breathing can be efficient here as well for the reduction of anxiety. That's kind of the nose breathing is the more.
Sorry, I'm talking specifically about everyone right now fearing to breathe. You know, like from thinking that they're going to breathe in something, because you go to the shops or you go over there, everyone's like putting their backs to everybody.
I know what I mean. Yeah.
You know.
But the thing is, if you don't take a full inhale, you don't get a full exhale. You know,
right.
if you want to exhale things again, your exhale is actually quite powerful. So don't be scared. Take a full deep breath in.
Right.
Through the nose. You can exhale through the mouth, but you can exhale through the nose. That's fine as well. And if your lungs are full, then you actually get some force by breathing out as well.
Right. Wow, this is for this just answers a lot of questions that are relevant for right now. I just want to talk quickly about what are the other things that you know of scientifically that complement breathing that people can be doing right now to be taking care of themselves.
Yes, and before you answer that, if anyone watching has any questions, please feel free to put them in.
Angie's been on girls' duty.
They
were having combat warfare down there. We heard them.
Yeah, mine's asleep already. I hope so. I'm in the better time zone for that. What did we touch on? What else can you do? Is kind of one of the. I mean, it's what they suggest, especially when you do respiratory muscle training. Hygiene is important. You know, you're breathing through this. If you use anything like that, wash it. Wash it on it every time after use. Wash your hands before you're using it. Don't touch your face. Also, hydration, very, very important. As we touched on, keep hydrated, eat well, go outside and just kind of breathe fresh air if you can, you know.
And it's so simple, but I wanted to prompt you. I mean, we tell people in this group all the time to do that. But I wanted to prompt you because I want to hear from someone else exactly that, sunlight, fresh air and hydration are at the top of the list when it comes to these things.
Vitamin D is a contributor to your immune system. Yeah, you don't get it inside. So you have to be outside. And I mean, I'm very, very fortunate. I live up on a hill right by the woods. You know, I can be in the woods with no one else around, social distancing. It's all fine. There's no one else other than me and my dog. And just to have actually plants around you while you're breathing. Or, if you have the sea, go to the sea. You're more advantageous there than I am. I'm in a landlocked country. Sea air, you've got it's like an inhalation. So, because doing inhalation is another really good thing that you can do if you feel that you've an infection coming on. Just because if you do this with just warm water and salt, the vapor really opens up. It clears the mucus as well. You see really that it loosens it up, that you can get it out. And it really kind of opens up the lungs and just gets the good air in and gets everything relaxed and circulation going again. So
great. Now I don't know if you've already touched on this while I was on mummy duty, but what you said was really important about clearing the mucus. Did you already touch on that?
We already had. We did it.
Yeah, at length.
We got the gross stuff out of the way up front. I think we've pretty much covered everything. I think we've come to the time limit. But Nina, thank you so much for coming on here. This was super informative. Is there anything that you want to leave us with or add to before we sign off?
No, just kind of think about pulmonary hygiene. Take a deep breath, but I'm sure you're preaching that as well. Don't be scared to breathe. Look after yourself and breathe well.
Awesome. Thank you, Nina, so much. We appreciate it because we know it's late there in Europe. So we really appreciate, having you come on and speak. And we will let you know if there are any questions that came up from
sure.
the group.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
thank you so much for having me. That was
welcome.
lots of fun.
Great. Thanks, Nina.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.